Hey everyone, this is Gorno once again, back with another video for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. 2020 is finally here, which means we can expect a lot of great stuff when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And in today's video, I want to talk about some of the monsters that I'm really hoping makes it into Monster Hunter World Iceborne as future title DLC updates. Now in this particular video, I'm actually going to be doing it a little bit differently. First and foremost, I'm going to be talking about individual monsters that I want to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne from previous generation games, or maybe even the Frontier series. So these are individual monsters that I want to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne as future DLC updates. In the next segment, I'm going to be talking about monster types that I'm hoping Capcom can expand upon when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. What I mean by this is much like that of the Fanged Wyverns in the previous generation games where we only had the one Fanged Wyvern. I'm really hoping some monster types can be expanded upon in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. In the base game, we expanded on the Fanged Wyvern species where we had the Jagresses, the Gyroses, Dodogama, Odogaron, Tobikidachi, etc. And when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I'm really hoping that Capcom can expand on certain monster types from previous generation games that didn't quite have an expansion into Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So I'm really hoping that these monster types can get an expansion in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which I'll talk about after individual monsters. So let's go ahead and get started on some of the individual monsters that I want to see when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, either from previous generation games or from the Frontier series. Now, the first monster that I'm really hoping Capcom can bring back into Monster Hunter World Iceborne has to be none other than the Asta Loss itself. It's one of my favorite of the Fated Fours. Honestly, the Asta Loss would look really awesome in Monster Hunter World Iceborne graphics, and not only that, the weapon sets and armor sets of Asta Loss itself look amazing. In fact, I would say they would even look as awesome as that of the Namiel and the Safi'jiiva sets. That's just how awesome it is in my personal opinion. And honestly, I would love to see it in Monster Hunter World graphics. It would look really awesome. Both the Asta Loss and the equipment set that it has would look really amazing with the up-to-date graphics of Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And not only that, the fight against Asta Loss is very fun in my personal opinion because it's one of those electric type monsters that can use long range attacks and then bombard you with physical attacks afterwards. For those of you that might not know, this would feel somewhat similar to that of the Bazelgeuse, but in comparison to the Bazelgeuse, it's not using explosion, it's using lightning in order to bombard you. Basically, it would enhance its own body with the lightning capabilities, and sometimes it would use its lightning capabilities to attack you in long range and then suddenly dive towards you. It's a really awesome monster fight, and I really hope we get to experience it in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, the other reason I kind of want the Asta Loss in is because I kind of wanted to expand on the lore behind the kind of rivalry between the Asta Loss and the Rathalos. Very similar to that of the Glavenus and the Rathian back in Generations Ultimate, and of course in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. The Glavenus-Rathian rivalry was actually something that originated back in Generations, and Monster Hunter World Iceborne expanded on that when we got introduced to the Glavenus itself. And I'm really hoping that in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, if the Asta Loss makes it into the game, they do the exact same thing when it comes to the Asta Loss and the Rathalos when it comes to their rivalry. It'll be really interesting to see how Capcom will approach that in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. It'll be really awesome to have Asta Loss in it, and I'm really hoping that Asta Loss makes it in some way, shape, or form in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, one of the other monsters that I'm really hoping makes it into Monster Hunter World Iceborne is the Gormogon itself, and the reason is twofold. The first one is a little bit more technical, and that is the reason that the Gormogon skeleton is actually used a lot in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. The Behemoth, Nergigante and its variant, Safi'jiiva, Xeno'jiiva, Shara Ishvalda, they all use the same skeleton as that of the Gormogon itself, slightly modified to accommodate their capabilities, of course. Now, with all that being said, another reason that I want to see Gormogon in Monster Hunter World Iceborne is due to the fact that the Gormogon itself has the unique capability of the Frenzy Virus. And in previous generation games, you don't really see monsters get affected by the Frenzy Virus when there's a Gormogon around. But in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, that can completely change. Imagine a scenario where you're fighting a Gormogon and all of a sudden something like a Tigrex comes in, gets infected by the Frenzy Virus, and now you have two monsters to worry about. Honestly, it will be really interesting to see how the Frenzy Virus interacts with monsters in real time as you're actually seeing it during gameplay. And I would love to see that in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. The Frenzy Virus itself was a really unique kind of mechanic back in 4 and 4 Ultimate of Monster Hunter, and in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I think they can really make it into something even more interesting, because when it comes to the locales of Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne, they are open world based, meaning that there's no loading screens in between, switching between areas and all of that kind of stuff. Everything is happening in real time, and with monsters doing things like invading areas and doing turf wars, it'll be really interesting to see how this would interact with monsters in real time. Imagine a case scenario again where Gormogon, you're fighting it, and then the Tigrex comes in, and then on the right hand side you get these notifications about how monsters do turf wars and whatnot. Imagine a case scenario where there's an animation, and on the right hand side you see it says Tigrex infected by virus or something like that. It'll be really awesome to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Honestly, we have seen what it is capable of back in Monster Hunter 4 and 4 Ultimate. What would it be like to see all of that happen in real time in Monster Hunter World Iceborne? I cannot wait to see if that is a potential for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. It'd be really awesome to have Gormogon in Monster Hunter World Iceborne with its frenzy mechanic working as intended, but in real time rather than just being intended to be one of those kind of plot-based mechanics that improves monsters' capabilities. Honestly, it would just be awesome to see it in real time in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I want to see how Capcom will approach that. Now, the next monster that I would love to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne is none other than the Malfestio itself, and the reason for this is twofold. The first one is because of its capability of confusion. Confusion doesn't exist in Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne as of right now, as far as I'm aware at the very least. And I would love to see how Capcom would approach the confusion debuff in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Would it remain the same or would they alter it? In previous generation games, confusion is all about basically altering your controls. Up is down and left is right and so on. And in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, is that something that they can do, or would they alter it to suit the current game itself when it comes to the confusion ability? Honestly, I would love to see what Capcom does with the confusion ability of the Malfestio itself in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, the second reason I would love to see the Malfestio itself is because the Malfestio looks like a real-life animal that just jumps straight into the Monster Hunter games. Honestly, it looks like a real-life owl that you can have in your arm right now, and it looked like it just jumped straight into the game. The only real difference between a real-life owl and the Malfestio itself is some of the colorations on its body and of course certain anatomy parts, but overall it looks like a real-life animal that jumps straight into the Monster Hunter games. And considering the graphics of Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne feeling a bit more realistic, I would love to see what the Malfestio would look like in current generation engine when it comes to the Monster Hunter series. I would love to see it in Monster Hunter World graphics. Honestly, it would look so awesome, and I would just love to have this particular owl in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Honestly, I would love it. Now, the last individual monster that I would love to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne is none other than Eruzerion, an Elder Dragon from the Monster Hunter Frontier series. Honestly, this monster looks amazing in Monster Hunter Frontier, and I would love to see it in full Monster Hunter World graphics as a future title DLC update in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, the reason I picked this particular Elder Dragon above all other monsters in the Frontier series is first and foremost, it's an Elder Dragon, thereby it goes well with the team of Elder Dragons when it comes to the new world. Second of all, it has the ability of ice and fire at the same time. So similar to that of Alatreon, it does have multiple elements, but in comparison to Alatreon, it doesn't need to switch elements. It can use them both at the same time, which is really awesome. And finally, its overall aesthetics actually match that of some of the aesthetics the monsters share when it comes to Hoarfrost Reach monsters. So it has large antlers, very similar to Banbro. It has that kind of ice-like aesthetic feature, similar to Velkhana. It has the fur features that, again, it shares with the Banbro, so on and so forth. And honestly, I would love to see this monster in Monster Hunter World Iceborne in full Monster Hunter World graphics. It would look really awesome. Honestly, out of all of the Frontier monsters, this one was the most unique looking, and not only that, because it shares the same skeleton as that of Zenogre itself, Capcom doesn't actually have to make any new skeletons for this particular monster, so it would be really awesome to have another monster that kind of shares that same skeleton as Zenogre in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And overall, This monster is basically the Shoto Todoroki of the Monster Hunter series as a whole, with the whole fire and ice element working in tandem with one another, and I would really enjoy seeing that in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, being a frontier monster does mean it has some ridiculous movesets that for the most part would be so overpowered that in Monster Hunter World it would feel unrealistic to even have these movesets. So in my personal case scenario, it would mean that they would need to adjust the abilities of Erzerion to fit Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne, but overall, I think this would be a great monster to represent the Frontier series in Monster Hunter World Iceborne if Capcom themselves could start bringing in other Frontier monsters outside of Lavasiot and Ethnocratrice into the Monster Hunter series mainline. Honestly, I love this Elder Dragon. It looks really amazing and it would look really awesome in Monster Hunter World Iceborne from my personal opinion. Now then, with all of the individual monsters that I want in Monster Hunter World Iceborne out of the way, let's talk about expanding monster types in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now what I mean by this is, as it means basically what it says, I want to expand certain monster types in Monster Hunter World Iceborne that didn't really get an expansion in previous generation games. Now this happened when it came to the Fanged Wyverns in Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World expanded upon the Fanged Wyvern group of monsters by giving us monsters like Jagras, Great Jagras, the Great Gyros, Dodogama, Odogaron, Tobikadachi, and so on. So as you can see, Capcom themselves actually expanded on the Fanged Wyvern category, whereas in previous generation games, it was only Zenogre as well as its variation types that were representative of the Fanged Wyverns. So in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, there's two groups that I'm hoping that Capcom can expand upon as a monster category. First off is the Snake Wyverns, and second of all, the Temnocerans. Now when it comes to the Snake Wyverns, there's only one Snake Wyvern in the Monster Hunter series as a whole, as well as its subspecies, the Najarala and the Tidal Najarala. That is pretty much it. The Remobra were converted from Flying Wyverns into Snake Wyverns apparently, but I don't count them because they're minor monsters. So for the most part, there's only one large monster, which is Najarala and its subspecies. The Temnoceran or Temnoceran, I don't know how you pronounce that particular terminology, is the exact same case scenario. Nerskilla and the Shrouded Nerskilla are the only monsters that represent the Temnoceran group. There's no other monsters that are categorized as Temnocerans. So in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I'm really hoping that Capcom themselves can actually expand upon these two monster types by creating new monsters to represent these two monster types. Now I don't know how they're going to be able to do that, especially considering the fact that the Snake Wyverns themselves may pose a little bit of an issue, especially considering how most Snake Wyverns only have one long body, kind of like an actual snake, and Leviathans don't work in the Monster Hunter series when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. When it comes to the Temnoceran, because they're insect-based monsters, I'm really hoping that Capcom can actually work towards that in some way, shape, or form by giving us something outside of Nerskilla itself. So that one is a big maybe. When it comes to Temnoceran, the main aspect is that they're insect-like monsters, but they also have arachnid capabilities such as spewing webs and whatnot. So I'm really hoping that there's a potential for that to be expanded in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, there is one more monster group that could potentially be expanded, but this came from a collaboration, so I highly doubt it's gonna happen, and that is none other than the Relic group in the base game. Capcom could potentially increase the number of relics in Monster Hunter World Iceborne by collaborating with CD Projekt Red again, by bringing in another relic monster from the Witcher series, but again, that's a collaboration in and of itself, so it's a little bit difficult for them to be able to do that without having to go through CD Projekt Red themselves, so that's a little bit of a different scenario. But when it comes to the Snake Wyvern and the Temnoceran, they belong to Capcom. They can do whatever they want with those monster types. So honestly, I'm hoping they increase the representation of these monster types in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, because it would be really great to see how the environment of the new world is actually more suited for these kinds of monsters than the environments in the old world. Basically, in the old world, there's only one Fanged Wyvern because maybe, I don't know, the environment in the old world was just not suited for Fanged Wyverns, but we got loads of them in the new world. So maybe that's a case scenario that they can use in order to expand these monster categories in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I'm really hoping that they do that for this particular expansion when it comes to future title DLC updates. Now that is pretty much it for this particular video. As you can see, there's a good number of monsters that I would like to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and of course I would like Capcom to expand on certain monster types that exist in previous generation games when it comes to future title DLC updates in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Which monsters would you like to see return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, or which monster categories would you like to see Capcom expand upon when it comes to the Monster Hunter series as a whole by using Monster Hunter World Iceborne? Let us know in the comments below which monster types you would like to see expanded, or which monsters you would like to see make a return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now that is pretty much it for me for this video. If you enjoyed these videos, please feel free to leave a like on the video itself, as well as subscribe to the channel so you can go ahead and catch up on any future Monster Hunter contents that I might be doing or any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onward and upward.